settle in close, because this is one of those stories that starts just the way the best ones always do, in a wood, deep and quiet, where the trees grow so tall they seem to hold up the sky itself. And there, tucked among the roots and the rustling leaves, stood a little cottage, tidy as a pin, warm as a secret. It belonged to 3 bears. There was a great, enormous bear, the father of the family, if you like, with a voice like the bottom of a well. There was a middling bear, not so large, not so small, whose voice was somewhere in the middle of things. And there was a small, dear, wee little bear, whose voice was soft and high, like a question asked very gently. They had a table, and they had chairs, and they had beds, each one sized just so. And they were, in their way, perfectly contented. A family living quietly, asking only to be left in peace. One bright morning, the great bear made porridge. He ladled it into 3 bowls, a great big bowl for himself, a middling bowl for the middling bear, and a dear little bowl for the small bear. Now the porridge was hot, too hot to eat right away. So what do sensible bears do? They leave it to cool, naturally, and they go out for a walk among the trees. The wood in the morning is a fine place to be. Damp earth underfoot, birds just waking, light filtering soft and golden through the branches. The great bear plodded along. The middling bear ambled beside. The small bear trotted and sniffed and paused to investigate every interesting thing along the path. Meanwhile, back at the cottage, the door was closed. The fire was low, and the porridge sat steaming gently in its 3 bowls, waiting, as things in stories always wait, patient and still, for whatever comes next. Now, into this quiet place came a girl. She had been wandering in the wood, not because she was lost exactly, but because she was the kind of child who always needed to know what was just a little bit further along. Curious, you might say. Perhaps too curious, as we shall see. She came upon the cottage and she stopped. She looked at the little windows. She looked at the closed door. She knocked, but nobody answered, because of course the bears were still out walking. And then, and here, is where her curiosity got the better of her judgment entirely. She tried the latch. The door swung open. The smell of warm porridge drifted out to meet her. She stood for just a moment on the threshold, which is always a meaningful place to stand. The place between outside and in, between minding your own business and not. And then she stepped inside. The 3 bowls of porridge sat right there on the table, and the girl was hungry, the way you get when you have been wandering about in the morning air. She went to the great big bowl first and took a spoonful. Oh, it was too hot. It quite burned her tongue. She moved to the middling bowl and tried again. Too cold. Not warm and comforting at all, but flat and chill and rather unpleasant. Then she came to the small, dear little bowl. She took one careful spoonful. And oh, it was just right. Warm and sweet and perfectly, perfectly good. She had one more spoonful, and then another. And I am sorry to tell you that she did not stop until she had eaten every last bit of the small bear's porridge and scraped the bowl quite clean. Now, there is a lesson sitting right there in that little bowl, quiet as you please, if you care to see it. With her stomach full, the girl grew restless, the way well-fed children sometimes do, and she began to look about her. 3 chairs pulled up near the hearth. She tried the great big chair first, the great bear's chair, and she squirmed and shifted, but it was much too hard and much too wide and altogether uncomfortable. She climbed down and tried the middling chair. That one was too soft, and it swayed in a way she did not like. She crossed to the small, dear little chair, which was just her size, and she sat down. It was just right. Just exactly right. She rocked a little, and she settled, and she felt quite pleased with herself. But she rocked just a little too enthusiastically, as children will do when they are pleased with themselves, and the small chair creaked and tipped, and the leg gave way with a sharp little crack, and the girl tumbled to the floor. The chair was broken. She looked at it for a moment, and then she simply left it where it lay and went upstairs. Up the narrow stairs she went, and there she found the bedroom, with 3 beds lined up all in a row. The great big bed she tried first, lying back against the pillows. Too high at the head, it was not comfortable at all. The middling bed was too low at the foot, and she did not care for it either. But the small, dear little bed, she pulled back the coverlet and she lay herself down, and it was just right. Soft and warm and exactly the right size. The pillow smelled of something clean and good. A little breeze came through the window, and before very long at all, the girl's eyes grew heavy, and her breathing slowed, and she fell into a deep and dreamless sleep. She looked very peaceful lying there, her hands curled soft beside her face. She had no idea, not the faintest idea, of what was coming through the wood toward that little cottage. Padding along on 4 steady paws, the 3 bears came home from their walk ready for their breakfast. But the great bear stopped at the table and said, in his great rough voice, "Someone has been at my porridge." And the middling bear looked at her bowl and said, in her middling voice, "Someone has been at my porridge too." And the small bear looked at his dear little bowl and said, in his small, sad voice, "Someone has been at my porridge and eaten it all up." They found the chairs. They found the broken little chair. And then they went upstairs, and there, in the small bear's bed, there she was. The great bear's voice woke her like thunder. The small bear's cry made her sit bolt upright, and the girl opened her eyes to 3 bears standing over her, and she gave such a scream as you have never heard. She flung herself to the window, and she leaped out, and she ran into the wood, and she ran and ran and ran. And whether she ever found her way home, or whether she finally learned to leave other people's things alone, well, that part of the story, the wood